Today is a new day, and I have some concerns. I don't know if I changed anything a little bit before I stopped recording the last video. I don't think I did. I have a concern that this whole uniform helper thing, all this stuff here, is just highly over-engineered. It might make sense if we have some type of thing where we need to use a lot of uniforms and coordinate a lot of uniforms, and then we need some type of standard container to help that coordination. But I think all this stuff, trying to integrate it into the code to solve a problem that's already been solved, could lead to our code becoming quote-unquote spaghetti code. I'm not gonna get rid of it. I'll just leave it there for now as a thought of, hey, I have this idea that maybe it'll be helpful in the future. But even though we took all the time to write this, we're not gonna try to force it upon the code base if we find out that we don't really have a need for it. So this is kind of like how I talk about those you aren't gonna need it things. So the fastest code is the code you're not gonna write. And then also try not to code things because you think you might need them, because you might just end up not using them. And, I wrote this because it was fun and because it kind of helped me wrap my mind around some things about how the uniforms should work. But yeah, I don't think this whole section, so this UH section right here that starts at 521 and then all the way down to 803, right? So about a little bit less than 300 lines of code, about say 250. Wasted time. Well, not really wasted time. It helped me understand some things, but we might not want to have that in the project after we're done, just because it's bloat. What else? So we gotta check the debugger output here. I see argument 2 of WebGL2 rendering context.bind texture is not an object. So we gotta figure out where that's coming from. What the hell? So we have a gl.bind texture somewhere. So I'm guessing one of these things is null, maybe? It said not an object. So let's try to refresh. And let's inspect our data array. And we went from 0 to less than, so less than 2. Yeah, less than 2, because that'd be 0 to 1, right? Let's look in here and see what we have. So we have the texture handle, the texture slot. We have the same thing for this. I mean, it looks like everything's there. The texture slot. So this WebGL texture type, right? In C code, this would just be an integer. So they've kind of over objectified this for whatever reason. I don't know why. And that's why we did look at the C code earlier, just because I thought the C code of the WebGL documentation would remove some abstraction. And not only did it remove abstraction, but there was much more detail in the C documentation than the WebGL documentation we came across. So I gotta say that I really hate the Firefox debugger. So we're gonna go back here. We're gonna go back into the Chrome debugger and kind of look at this in Chrome. I was trying to learn how to use Firefox, but what I really like about Firefox is there are about config, where you can configure things really easy. You don't have to remember where it is in the menu system, because you can just remember the commands, and that's really nice, right? Because every time they come out with, for an analogy, every time they come out with a new Windows operating system, But you have to remember, you have to like re-find everything. But if you know the command line, you can just use the command line commands, and the command line is usually the same between versions of Windows. And so Firefox has this similar thing going on where all that about config stuff is a little bit more stable than the menu layouts. Why that is, I don't know. Okay. Okay, so there is... What is going on here? Okay, so I'm going to move this down to where you can't see it right now, just because I need to kind of figure this out and I need some more real estate, but I'll move it back up after I've kind of figured out what's going on here. So that looks valid. What the fuck is going on here then? Okay. gl.activeTexture. Okay, so console. What does it not like about gl.activeTexture? Texture unit out of range. Really? Oh, what the fuck? So somewhere in my code I've swapped around texture slot and texture handle. I think I said that I was going to make this mistake. That doesn't make it any better, but so I'm gonna move this back up and we're gonna look for where I may be mixing up the texture handles and the texture slots. So the texture handles, okay, we start off with like, now if we could get these to be, if we could get some of these values to be read-only, that would help us. So we could add some extra code to prevent us from doing something stupid, because we're doing something stupid. But I I'm conflicted there because, I already said things like, don't mindlessly encapsulate things so people can't do stupid things with them. Just be more careful about what you're doing. So let's control 0 and let's highlight both the texture handle and the texture slot. Kind of see like where we're screwing this up. Okay, so the texture handles are here. Oh, and here's where it's being swapped, right? So we have this transposition here, and this is kind of like why I like to break things up so I can double click and see the connections, because right now I can't. And that is, do we want to, I mean, we could fix that. Yeah, so we could fix this. Sure, why not? So right, to fix this, right, we just gotta swap these around. Right, so it's texture handle and texture handle, texture slot, right? And then we need to make sure that it's the same deal over here. And if we get this to work, oh geez, that would not be good. Okay, handle and slot. Is that even the order that it's in here? Handle and slot. Yeah, that's the order it's there. So we'll want to just keep that same ordering, right? Texture handle and texture slot. Pixel array, width and height. All right, so try to keep the same ordering of all these elements as the ordering of these elements, so you don't have to think about it as much. I'm not really. Well, let's just keep on doing this. So let's refresh, and F12. Open up F12 here, and we're back in just fuck Firefox. Like, this is just confusing me having two browsers open. Let's just okay. So F12. Open up our console. Bind texture on. Parameter 2 is not of type WebG. Let's refresh because I thought we changed that. And play, and then console. Okay, yeah. So now we're good. But let's. Oh, sorry, you didn't see. Oh man, I gotta get better at that. So there's no errors. So it's just working now, as expected because of those changes we made. So now in the code, what we're gonna do is. I think I really do want to change around this and put these in containers that can be, because right, we got some code duplication here, and that we didn't need to do, right? So we had to duplicate code to repackage it so we could use it in this loop here, and so we added more code. And we broke something, right? Because the more pieces you add, the more likely something is to break. So we added more pieces and we broke it. And we did this really quick because we're like, we want to keep it simple. But yeah, containerizing this might be a way to go. I just don't like over containerizing things if I can help it. And this is really like, we have an array, a handle, and a slot. So we kind of have, so it's kind of like this, represents this, this UniPicks, right? We have the array. We have almost everything here, except we have the, instead, well, this isn't it's not a uniform. So instead of this, it would be instead of location, we would have handle and then a texture slot, because it's a texture, not a uniform. So this whole idea is kind of like not correct, anyways. Yeah, let's turn these things into some type of object. So global data, and then above the global data object, we'll have like a var. I don't know. I guess technically it's whatever we're calling. It has the same exact function as this UniPicks. That's not really a uniform, is it? Let's go look up the definition of a uniform in OpenGL. Uniform OpenGL, and make sure we have the make sure I have the proper understanding of what a uniform is. Okay, so declare with the uniform storage qualifier. Okay, so that's one big thing to give it away. So if we're just like looking at Let me refresh this because I kind of... God, what the hell did I change? Oh, right. It's because I was about to type something and then I didn't, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it's declared with a uniform storage qualifier. So if we go look up our code and we're trying to see if that texture is a uniform or not, well, do we have the word uniform anywhere to identify that texture? And let's see, we have the sampler, and then right, we have these textures here, like the texture samplers and the textures. Like, what is the connection between them? Because I feel like this sampler can also be thought of as the texture. Like when we're doing texture uploads to this, this is what it is, I think. I'm not sure though. Well, if that were the case, we would have the string isomem and somewhere, right? I don't think we do. Yeah, I mean, we just have handles, but we don't have any like names yet. So I'm gonna guess that this also needs to be bundled with a that all this code that we've done needs to be bundled with some type of uniform for a texture sampler. So we need like the texture handle, the texture slot, and then, you know, the dimensions of the bitmap, right? The actual data on the CPU side that's going to get uploaded to the GPU, and then the width and height of that data, and then we probably also need one more parameter for a sampler for that data when it's on the GPU side. So let's where should we go from here? So this UniPicks thing, it seems kind of like the texture is not a uniform, but in here, in this object, what we might want is like bundle the texture and then a uniform to sample it. Right, have that all centralized in one location. So functionally that's kind of like what the goal of this was. So I might just want to call that container UniPicks. So what we'll do is we're just gonna get kind of dirty here. We're just going to comment all this out, make it kind of misaligned, and right, so it's gonna be kind of obnoxious and very noticeable. And I'm going to take this new UniPicks, and I'm going to go all the way up here where we were thinking about it. And actually, we'll just have, we can move this function somewhere else later, but function new UniPicks, right? And then we'll have var UniPicks equals, right? And then object.seal. And then we'll return it. And then within here, we're going to just take all this kind of stuff that we were doing before, and we're going to just kind of make it more generalized. Right, so we can take off this qualifier here, and then we can, we can make this a little bit. So this would be texture handle, and this is texture slot, and this is the array of pixel data, and the width, and then also the height of the data. Or it's more like pixel bitmap width, and then height. And I abbreviate width and height enough in all of my code that I don't really have to explain. I don't really have to de-abbreviate it anywhere because I use it enough where it's self-explanatory, at least to me. And then all these values we need to we could do something like this, where anything that's a number, we're just gonna put like a 0 and then minus something, right, to have some type of negative trap value stored in there, because none of these values should be negative ever if they're valid. Obviously some of these values could be 0 and 0 would be invalid. But the problem with 0 is that 0 initialization, depending on what languages you're working in. And so it's invalid, yes, which helps you find the problem, but because it's 0 initialized, you can't figure out, okay, well, when did that 0 get put in there, right? And if we find a negative 444, or negative 222, or negative 555, it's going to be much more likely that we know where it happened, right? Okay, so we got this new UniPicks, right? And we have all this stuff. And then I might put a little to-do in here. To-do uniform data for texture sampling. So one texture sampler was texture sampler what the hell did we call it? It wasn't texture slot, it was it's a variable slot. Okay, pixlock. So basically the location, texture sampler location. We could probably call it pix, or call it one of these. And then texture sampler name and shader. And that would be we'd call that one pix name or text name. And I think that's the only things we would need to get that working. Okay, so now that we have this new object, the first thing we want to do is just make sure the code's still running. And it's not. We screwed something up. The most likely thing, because I do it all the time, is right here. It's the first comma needs to be removed. So if we do that, and now we refresh, we should be okay. Yeah, so now refreshing, everything's still there. I'm going to put the console back over here. We're going to move this window over here. I really wish they wouldn't do that. Okay, so now that we have this here, we can kind of when we refresh, we can see if there's anything popping up complaining, and we don't see anything. What's with this? I don't understand why when you move the window over to the side, it doesn't initially snap. Okay, here's it snapped, here's it not snapped, snapped. I don't know what the functionality or reason behind having to do this action twice like that is. So 1, 2, I don't know, whatever. Oh, you don't even see that. So this is what I'm talking about. So we go over here, and then we go Windows right, not snapped, and then we gotta hit one more time to snap it in there. And that's when you have multiple monitors, that gets annoying as hell, because you keep on having things leak over the edge of your screen, and then I don't even think it's very consistent consistent, because this is snapped. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand how that works. It just seems a little counterintuitive. Okay, so now that we have this container to create these, I guess, these are basically like, this is basically like a texture container. Texture container is a way you could think of it. So right here, this is kind of, you could think of this as a texture container. But I'm going to keep this UniPicks name just because it's the same idea as I had earlier, but the implementation I realized needs to be a little bit different because of the variables it's going to need. I didn't fully understand what pieces of data it will require. So we'll just do that, and then we'll take this constructor function, and we have global data here. So what we're going to do is say, so var yeah, why not? Okay, isomem, and then the master memory right over here. Isomem, master memory. And then we're going to populate these things over here. Now, can we, since we've already meticulously filled these out, would it be advantageous to us to, if we could, can we somehow, like in C you can like assign one struct to another, and it's kind of like a memory copy. Is there anything in ES6 that gives us like a mem copy where we can kind of like put this inside of an anonymous, if we could put this all inside of an anonymous object? No, because the variable names are different. Var global data. Okay, so let's we're just gonna have a function init global data function, I think is what we called it, but we have a certain name for it. I'm going to go into my notes. In my notes, I'm just going to INI glow dat, like I believe that's what I called it. So it was like INI. I believe it was like INI glow dat is what I called it, like something like that. And I just want to keep consistent names between code bases. So if we look at the old code from a few days ago, if I have it, okay, so this one here, language, yeah, so we called it INI glow dat, glow func, and then the glow classes. So I want to, oh, you didn't see that, sorry. So over here, I noticed that I am calling it initialize global data, initialize global functions, and initialize global classes. We should really, if we're gonna like fuse the code we're currently writing with this code, then we need to use, it's gonna make it a lot easier if we use the exact same names for the exact same concepts. So when we come across this function in one chunk of code, and we come across this function in another chunk of code, and we need to merge those two chunks of code, we know that all we have to do is take the bodies of both of those functions and just smash the contents together. And they'll be kind of mindless and simple, so we should But if you have to first figure out which two functions are functionally the same, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Oh god, and I have not been timing myself, so this is